다 강가 다시 델레도 더니 강가 다 가리이나 있다니 여분 로시기를 와친 보였어.
So first of all, Tashi Dele Geshe-la says, welcome to everybody, and he hopes that all is going well exactly as you wish.
다 든지지래. 다 간조 든지지는 루리지야 돼. 더니 다 대시 있어야 돼. 아니 실로라 제모 뭐야 되니 저 논이 저 그건 되스.
So we gather today with this awareness once again that which we call happiness, right? There's a connection to outer conditions, right? But that the main causes of happiness are something internal, something within.
다시 이제 가제 남만다 여바 이나요. 다 농그 소노 또돌아 때네 대신이네 요도 마요 세야 돼. 저 셀 아니 뒤뒤아레스.
So we know that even with those outer conditions there, when we speak of happiness, especially a lasting happiness, whether that comes about or not, this is very much related to our way of thinking, right? And to the causes that we cultivate within our mind.
다 갈래 버겠다네 답이 되시세야도 저는 전주 선비 되시 안에 타마다 손지가 안에 타두비 되시세나요. 다 세대 요아도니 야르야르 이사레스.
So then these sort of more stable forms of happiness, whether we speak about the bliss of liberation, whether we speak about the happiness of a bodhisattva or the ultimate happiness of a Buddha, all of these are sort of increasingly higher levels of happiness that happen through the training, the cultivation of the mind.
다 셀리 인담만다 다 자tom 두점 뭐 야르세야레스 자와도 야란담만다.
So within the mind, of course, we understand that there are many sort of potentialities embedded within, and some of them we could say these are sort of like the root ones, and then there are many branches of those as well.
어다 든지지리 다 뒤눈에더니 새 아니 밤에와서 새 가르래. 어다 디근 예모 라바 가르래. 예모 참모 가르래. 다 된간조
So one of the things that we need to identify, of course, is the minds or the ways of thinking that we need to get rid of. We should think, what are the sort of coarser, unwholesome minds that we want to take care of? What are the more subtle, unwholesome minds that we want to take care of?
어다 손지이나요. 간조 버겐진다 돈보 이빠 선바티바 노지가 다 전에 돈보와 아니 이빠 선바 rim바저다 다뭐 순디와스.
And so our teacher, Lord Buddha, he kind of proposed, almost like when you go to school, you start in grade 1, move on to 2, 3, and so forth. He proposed the various stages in which we can train the mind to fulfill this.
어다 든지지리 다 나로서 이나요. 다 버겐에 칼라 대고돈에 대요는 칼라 사초른다고 가르.
So he basically set out, we could think if we're hungry, that the Buddha has set out like different plates of any type of food that we would want, like a banquet.
But at the
moment, our situation is this. We might not have much room within our mind to take that food because the unhelpful minds are kind of like unwanted guests, right? That are taking up space, a little bit like that. So, from countless lifetimes until now, we've sort of followed those minds, thinking that they might be a way to secure that happiness, but the happiness has not been secured, right? This is the situation. So we see, like with our eyes, right? So many different beings are always searching for happiness, but they miss the mark. And that's partly because they don't actually understand what the root of their unhappiness is. So within samsara, right, the suffering that is experienced is of 3 different types, but most of beings are only paying attention to that first type of suffering.
So,
these 3 types of suffering are something that are part of the experience of all the different types of beings, human, animal, and so forth within cyclic existence.
다 텔로 로조조 게시라 문두하스 오코시 오레디아레스.
And, with humans and animals, we can see that suffering that they experience. This doesn't require a lot of study to perceive that.
다 텔리 때에 버게 강에 디사가. 다 때에서 갈래 카와데 제이둥아데레 다때 버게 셔로바도 토모이다 버게 노니라 메바조야가 레카 모모조기와레스.
So that's that first type of suffering, the suffering of suffering. But then there's a suffering which is more subtle than that. And this is the suffering of change. And that suffering of change might not be as immediately perceptible. And it is something that the practitioners of both Buddhist and non-Buddhist traditions pay attention to.
다 손지 페비 간에 체 토벌 즈그 안에 띵엔저 즈메가 띵엔저 뇨레존에 체 토보 네발 단이 미모모요아레스.
예.
손진 좀을 페비 갈라.
Yep.
든디가 다 차반디제게 둥아 메바서 말에 제이둥아 메바서 어서 거기 띵엔저 토케 안에 즈메가 띵엔저 토케 모모요아레스.
So at the time that the Buddha was teaching in India, there were many practitioners of these various dharmic traditions, these non-Buddhist dharmic traditions, who understood the second type of suffering, the suffering of change. They cultivated its antidotes along with samadhi, single-pointed concentration, and they used this to achieve rebirth, for example, as a deva in the formless realm. So there were many beings who achieved this. So are people having problems hearing me, or is it just Greg? You are having problems? Avilash, help me out here. I can't read all the different gestures of folks.
I don't have any issues at my end. I can hear you pretty well.
Okay. I can turn up the gain on my mic if this would be helpful. So just give me a moment to do that. Yeah, it seems people are having mixed experience. Anyway, I'll turn up the gain slightly, and hopefully that will meet everybody's needs. Just a second. Yeah, so I have adjusted, so I don't know how many people are noticing a problem, but if there's just one or two people noticing a problem, sometimes it's from there and sometimes it's from my end. But anyways, let me know and I'm happy to adjust. Hopefully this is a little bit louder for folks. Yes, no worry, no need to apologize for the interruption. It's good that we have nice sound. Yeah, no need to apologize. Again, listen.
This one?
Yeah.
다 손지고 동보대 던지게 내서 다 매봐줘야 된다. 그 띵엔서 주메게 띵엔서 뇨래 아야 데스시바레스.
So then, in order to kind of get rid of that second type of suffering, then within the Buddha's teachings, there are also methods to develop concentration and to achieve rebirth in these form and formless realms.
다 된다 던지지래. 대지 관계가 띵엔서 토쇼 관계 토바 이나요. 단다 셀프게
However, even having sort of achieved these sort of highest results of the practice of samadhi, single-pointed concentration, right? That real stable happiness still is not ultimately reached. But that is not to diminish, right, those beings who achieve those births as the form and formless realm devas through their practice of samadhi, because in order to reach the formless realm, for example, this requires meditating sufficiently to abandon attachment and the other afflictions of the desire and form realms. So it is quite some doing.
다 대셔로바도 토모이 뇨래래 간졸라 뇨래 제기 요아래 다 하고서로 토모인을 레디아레스.
So this is a practice, right? Abandoning the afflictions of the desire realm and so forth. This is a practice that is common to both Buddhist and non-Buddhist dharmic traditions.
다 손지가 다 깔라세는 만들 깔라 제시오테. 아니 둥아지 둥안지 때 안조 매바서 그저 강에래 되네. 되니 예. 시워요 그게 때에서 강에 들레스.
Yeah. So the Buddha's advice about this is that, yes, of course, the suffering of suffering and the suffering of change are things that we want to pay attention to and that we want to get rid of, but they are not the most subtle form of suffering. There's something beyond that.
다 델리주 깔레 카와 델리주 띠사바 멍엠비 시워 매비가 다 녀다 차쇼데 차반드지게 둥아세하드레.
So those are the types of sufferings that we see. But the suffering that is more subtle, more profound, the suffering that we do not immediately see, this one is also very important to address. And that is the all-pervasive, some translators say compounded suffering.
다시 또 가시겠으나 때 멍엠비다. 시워 매비다. 체슈된 가로서 데레디아레.
So that is like the sound. It's very important, but it is like the sound that we do not hear. It is like the suffering that is not so easily perceptible, but that is very important to pay attention to.
다 데레 다데 병인의 병강이 쪼즈네 매와서 그거다 하고서로 다 되게 될다 손지가 다 쪼데되게요 아이사 타방인의 답이 되시다 다 디네로 하고요 아레스.
So it is because the methods that Lord Buddha teach allow us to address this main problem, which is this all-pervasive or compounded suffering, that real happiness, that moksha or liberation is possible through his teaching.
차반 도시에 세근도와스.
Yeah.
차세리.
Yeah.
코스 유주를 차디요 아레스.
So when we say all-pervasive suffering, the chap or kyap, this means to pervade. Geshe said it's pervading all three realms. That's why it's called all-pervasive. It pervades the form, formless, and desire realms, right?
차바 도시에 세아테.
Yeah.
길레가 쪼데.
Yeah.
누가 돈보니데. 저 뭐체바 용화 속이요 아레스.
So, duche hamako, sorry.
스키 속이요 아레스 조.
Yeah.
도시에서 조아스.
So what it? Karesogire. So this all-pervasive compounded suffering, so the kyapa duche gidungal, the duche, Geshe is saying that this word means that this all-pervasive suffering is actually the maker of the other two types of suffering, suffering of suffering and suffering of change.
어다 던지지 이자 타방이네는 로야 근데 봐 여기 이네 대인이 먼저 토네라 어다 대매 봐서 여기 단 대바지 요거야.
So those who strive towards real moksha liberation, they have to kind of see this relationship, and then they have to bring some effort to eliminate this pervasive or all-pervasive compounded suffering.
어다 델다 타인이 먼저 더매 세대한테 하마거나 로서 때는 먼저 다 손지게 딴데서 사바라보데 좀벌리 편에 쪼데레스.
And without the method of meditation upon selflessness, without realizing selflessness, it is not going to be possible to uproot that most subtle type of suffering. And this is why the doctrine of no self was one of the new aspects of Lord Buddha's teaching that he propounded in the world.
어다 손진 좀벌리 페게야 신지게 대한테 페게야 쪼데레디아레스.
So the reason that the Buddha came into the world, one of the reasons that he had to come and help sentient beings was principally to propound this doctrine of selflessness, actually.
어다 근데요 다 디드리게 더 매비네서 데셀 소와질레 바이나 다리 띵에서 바저도 토모이뇨레 게야만두스.
So His Holiness the Dalai Lama has said that if one is able to have this realization on selflessness, this will be enough to uproot the afflictions without paying great attention to the development of samadhi, of single-pointed concentration.
어다 단계 럼바지던 로켓에 대해서 umbo 또보근로 도드래요. 레스 다 돈번에 돈만인 거는 매봐줘야 돼.
Right.
umbo nom보근로 도드래스.
So this way of kind of addressing the sort of coarser types of suffering first and then moving along, this is the method for disciples of limited faculties. Sharp faculty disciples will enter into meditation on selflessness or emptiness directly and will immediately start working to eliminate the most subtle form of suffering.
어다 던지지 이자 남에서는 저거 요아래 돈반이에서는 저거 요아래 어다 대 천디그 대시 돌안 저와요 봐. 다 뭐터니 다 파게 타봐 말레 봐도 그 대시 강가도 저와요. 템보 요아래.
So that we call selflessness, or we could also say emptiness, we should understand that these are things that are very much related to the happiness of this lifetime, but also related to the happiness from lifetime to lifetime until we achieve that goal of liberation.
나로서 마찬가지로 니마 찌리나요. 기워매 봐서 그때 노돈 처음에 노도도 좋아한다 아무라고 저거 요아래.
Also, when we look at our unhappiness over the course of a day, we can see that so much of this unhappiness is caused by misperception and the false thinking or mental projections that follow that.
어다 대지 가가다 저는 니모라 빠르지고 다 저거 요아래 왔어.
And so these are things that are also giving rise to all of the coarser afflictions as well.
다 니모로 아빠 대지고 다 니모 코로 싸움해 봐 말해. 싸워도 아주 말이 봐서 하지. 다 요버려 요아래.
And we could say that those coarser afflictions, right, that they are not sort of arising disconnected. They are arising connected with the root affliction, which is the ignorance grasping at the self.
다 던지지 이자 다 다음에 세대하던 거 가지 더더로 소소가 다 제고 주고 기소 고서 그 돈에 다 보게 대해서라서나 다 가디이나 다 기본로야지 요아래.
So if we engage in hearing, contemplation, and meditation on selflessness, if we engage with selflessness both through analytical and placement meditation, then we are really setting ourselves up to achieve this goal of lasting happiness.
다 소소로 롱게 대 퍼스츠바 대야티 대 잘라지 쪼지 대래.
So it's actually, in terms of achieving our own welfare or well-being, right? This is one of the most powerful tools that we have to do so.
다 루제니께 대 퍼스츠바 저발라 다 대려셔 봐. 니지 쇼주 세로 봐면아. 루데니께 대 퍼스츠바 다시만 로토요 말해.
But when we speak about achieving the welfare of both self and others, especially achieving the welfare of both self and others in the sort of a fullest ultimate way, then this mind engaging with selflessness is not enough, right? We also need, together with that, the practices of love, compassion, and the other method sides of the path.
다 던지지 이자 강종로 사태는 루데 치크 돈바. 예데 주크 돈바. 매 걸어야 본디와스.
And so this is why when we speak about the destination, right, the ultimate goal of our practice, we speak about the Dharmakaya, the truth body for one's own welfare, and the Rupakaya, the form bodies for the welfare of others. So that language lines up nicely, Geshe-la was saying.
다 내서 던지지 요 이자 제이니까서는 뭐도 레 돈보이니까네 세테만야라 때네 가세 더더 어느 뒤도 대적기가 가르쳐 가래. 인적이 로진들이 세아테니 가서 뭐시고요.
So then we need to understand how to integrate everything that we are doing to working towards that goal. So even as a beginner, beginning with the foundational practices, how do the 4 foundations of mindfulness, for example, relate to this? And in terms of our potentiality, right, in terms of the Buddha nature, what do we mean by the naturally abiding lineage, and what do we mean by the developmental lineage?
어다 대지 때에서 좋아질 레바 이는 તને 잘라서 전부 소설로다 보게 뭐가 요바다 하고는 가디나 뽑아도 다 어다 텐데 보게 어째서 뭐야.
So if we understand those potentialities very well, then this will help us to understand what we have within us that makes it possible to achieve these things. This will help us have a courageous, engaging attitude in our practice. Yeah, so we are going to proceed then accordingly. So we'll begin with the recitations, Abhilash, just the prayers for teaching occasions that we usually do. Mare mare karinchia. So the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. Perfect. Tumba chom den de tejin je ba ra chom ba yanda ba zo be sangye je ba dang sha su den ba de wa she ba she den jem ba che bu du we ka lo jor wa la na me ba la da mi namgi temba sangye chom den de be jawa shakya tu bala cha zelo che de gyatso ji ho temba chom den de teje she ba da chom ba yang da ba zo be sangye re ba dang sha zo den ba de wa she ba she de jem ba che bu de we ka lo jo ro la na me ba la da mi na gi tem ba song ge chom den de be cha wa sha kya tu ba la cha ze lo che de kya zu ji ho Tumba chom den de de jin che ba da chom ba yang da ba zo be song ge je ba dang sha zo den ba de wa she ba she den jem ba che bu de we ka lo jo ro la na me ba la da mi nam gi tem ba song ge chom den de pe ja wa sha kya tu ba la cha ze lo che de kya zu chi ho. Do the short mandala. So shi bu ju me do do ri la li ji ni de gen ba di song ge jin de me de bo wa gi ro ku nang da jin la che ba sho i tam guru ratna me da la ka niryata ya mi. Refuge and bodhicitta. Chedan soki chenam la changchu badu dani kyansu chi dagi chenyen gipe sunam gi jola benjir sangi drupar sho. Chedan soki chenam la changchu badu dani kyansu chi dagi chenyen gipe sunam gi jola benjir sangi drupar sho. Chedan sogi chenam la changchu pardo dani gyatso chi dagi chenyen gibe senam ge rola penchir sange dropar sho.
Oda tanda nanzu tangi chik tuni shonchu baada dani shas cho sekduwas.
Yeah.
Oda kadi ina shawut oda asutani de kuya mara sunji to tsaso na tani goja kuya mara shandro kuya oda shandro pukesha kuya mara.
So Geshe says, you'll notice it says, take refuge until I am enlightened. So these words, until I am enlightened, mean that up until that point, right, we're continuously going to need to be mindful of refuge. But after Buddhahood, after enlightenment, then we don't need the protection of refuge. We don't need to meditate on refuge or anything really, right, because one has achieved all that needs to be achieved.
Oda yel pemba deyachi mato tani tani leka demato deun kalechi chene maybe tuni deyachi nganzu rosa chinduwas.
So actually, at that point, all that is left is for one to engage in the activities that benefit others, right? There is nothing left of difficulty that needs to be achieved.
Da koala da leka da gaze de debagin ko zuya korom nduwas. Yo ko da siba kolo nganzo hako nduwas. Kolo ko no chese ko no ji ko re de yarmato kon roga sachi nduwas.
So if we don't achieve this or liberation, but kind of just continue doing things the way that we're doing, let's say, and remain within samsara, then we actually know that things are going to stay the same. It's going to be the status quo, right? If you think Geshe-la was saying about the wheel of existence, it is just a wheel going around and around through all of these realms over and over again.
어다 던지지 자 이니면 코알 가서 지녀니라 델레 타와지 그거도 좀비 달로 템버지 그더 그야레스.
So what we need to cultivate is a mind that is weary of samsara, and because of that weariness with samsara, thinks that I must achieve liberation from cyclic existence.
어단 저건데 와서 코알 데비갈 코이 대시 요비티니 당간조 연다지 저 그야레스.
Right. And so then, of course, while we are in samsara, that doesn't mean that we don't need to experience those temporary happinesses of samsara. It just means that along with the activities we do to secure that, we need to put some effort into achieving the happiness beyond samsara.
어다 거의 대시 아니 그 소만나 워치니라 당인의 파쇼들 다 다비 대시 진도 그야레스.
So based upon this samsaric happiness, right, experiencing it, but understanding its limitations, we aim beyond that to the happiness of liberation.
어다 대용 다또 최쇼대 용제 유주 어다 들지라 다바 야쇼지는 그도 somebody 당간조 자 최쇼들에도 야레스.
And the most important mind, right, is the one that thinks beyond self to both self and others, aiming to achieve supreme liberation, full enlightenment, to have the welfare of both.
어다 손지이나 까지 좀에 썰프게 깔레자데 다 디텐들 깔레자 버러스.
So it is for that purpose, right, for that supreme liberation with which one can benefit both self and others. This is why the Buddha undertook engaging in the merits of 3 incalculable eons.
나로서 까지 좀에 썰먹게 좀에 답변이 사야 못 가서 졸라 또 잘해.
And we realize 3 incalculable eons, that sounds like a huge amount of time, and it is, but it's nothing compared to the number of eons that we've wasted with the status quo, right? If you compare it.
어다 다른 지와지 또는 얘네 손지 코론도서들 다 롱갈 땜본로기 세기와레스.
So cultivating this idea, right, helps us develop this wish to say, from today, I am really going to seriously engage with this path leading to Buddhahood.
손지게 너무 냄바지 수디네 되는 데를 수인도 와스. 누가 시바샤메 로곰바샤메 세레 누가 메와 좀 먹기비티세지요.
Right.
로곰 먹기비티세지요. 디디네 수사레.
So when the Buddha says there is no suffering to be known, there is no path with which to engage, this is speaking from the point of view of Buddhahood, right? Because at that point, no suffering is experienced. One has gone beyond it. At that point, no path needs to be cultivated because everything is fully cultivated.
So
the Buddha here is making a proclamation like, having done the work, I have reached at this result.
So
we will just now, having said that, just take some moments to do the preliminary meditation. So tapping into that nature of the fundamental mind, its neutral, equanimous nature, let us begin there.
melon hataba noji chomebi so no to takasa kalsendo der se rapa kanga so se koro pa tambashi somadong.
So as we collect our mind, think about when you breathe onto a mirror, that mist or condensation dissolves slowly into the final point and disappears. In this way, think all of the sense minds and the coarse minds are slowly dissolving into the fundamental mind, and rest in that for a moment.
No to kanga 너네 초매비 초와 강가 세 고르르는 파터 차소나 아니 리요더니 대화 세 거용와 노도 뉴가 다 레레 쇼요 소마지.
So having relaxed into the fundamental nature of the mind like this, we can think that all of the unhelpful thoughts and feelings, the mental projections, these slowly dissolve away. And we tap in to the fundamental mind, which is open, vast, and clear. The body and mind become relaxed.
다 대용 세 고르가 노르는 다 보게 조조지대 다 그주고 생중고 가리면 다시고 딱이 소마지.
Think having tapped into that fundamental nature of the mind, we want to examine that. What is that like on the relative level? What's its nature like on the relative level?
슈지니 따파따위가 세 고르나 이에도 이메바 가동메바 아니 어다 주도 든지 메비다 노가동바 노지지 다워지.
So one thing that we'll notice is that we call the mind, it doesn't have a particular shape, color, or form, yet it's definitely present, isn't it?
노가 뚱바지가 이사 뒤에 노는 다 중앙지세나 뭐도 류도 대지다 레간다만다 어떤 거로서 메이나요 다 레가 여보 몸보지요 아레스.
It's vast, like an empty sky. When we bring ourselves, the four elements and so forth within us into balance, we can tap into this nature, which is like the empty sky.
베테 노지 세 고르는 이도 가도 저주사 든지 문도 되네 이나요 세 고르 저와도네 레가치네라 다 뒤노니 봐 노버돈다이다 내서 여보 몸으로야 됐어.
And so this mind, which is not pinpointable, which doesn't have a definable color, shape, or form, it also has this capacity of vastness. And when we tap into and transform that, there are many jewels that we can come away with.
강에 제키가 다세 가리나요 동보 춘주 대내 가름바 이도 뉴르뉴르노네 어다 타마 니모 바자도 지바 사베도 지바 바종와서야 세 고르를 니바친디스.
So the mind has the power to identify and diminish these afflictions, eventually to clear those afflictions and their latencies or imprints, those seeds away completely. And at that point, true happiness is experienced.
근데 세도 세가 니바 용주도 다 당기라바 노지 리자치모 니가 노니 다 진저가 리세아들야도 소마도.
So this mind and the mind's power on the relative level, out of the two types of Buddha nature that we mentioned, these are the developmental lineage, the developmental lineage.
리자치모 디지 세네 름바름바다 보게 타바른도야 쇼지 셈비살은도야 아니 타마타마다 손지살은도야 강가 조지데 드리레도 소방와시야.
So we recognize that this developmental lineage, develop means that we work with this potentiality in steps, and slowly, slowly, this brings us to the achievement of liberation. This brings us to cultivating as a bodhisattva, and finally towards the full enlightenment of a Buddha.
Tendri se kuzu te tashi ne deli ju di sabi ga ta se koro gechi ngama shima. Oda tendri jini pa shewa yena an zuga zuza teni me de wachi. Zani raya teni me de wachi. Ta netsu chindus.
And then along with that, sort of on a more subtle level, when we look at the mind as a as a continuity or a continuum of consciousness going from moment to moment to moment, we see that there is nothing pinpointable, nothing identifiable right away. And that is a more profound understanding.
Tendri se tendri roji me bi tendri tumba ni de. Ta phuge sunji sari. Arne chikan roya ga ta roji niri se adil ga du so maro.
So that mind that lacks true existence, the emptiness of that mind, this is what is known as the naturally abiding lineage. And as a potentiality, we speak about that as the natural abiding lineage is connected to the Dharmakaya.
Tendri ri za chenpo te ji ta tini ka la ta phuge. Nyemon pa to te bacha arji teni tsugu papa nu ji ko teni la. Kwa ni te teni ta te ji rong yin yu zu te pa tsoma zoni sunji sala chigi sompa chi.
So that potentiality, right, those precious potentialities, they are at the moment covered by the afflictions and their imprints, like the skin of an onion, those layers of the skin of the onion. And what we need to do is peel those layers back to activate those potential and become enlightened and capable of guiding both ourselves and others to supreme happiness. So meditate on bodhicitta.
Soma no ji ta kanga so ji njowa to ya yo ba te se rong ji koro ta jeng la ba no ge sa. Ani choma kanga lo wo ji ren ji se tela tine ta kanga do to ge soma ji.
So as we meditate on this, we should think that it is definitely possible to purify our mind and to be able to realize this and benefit others. The reason is that the nature of our mind is pure luminosity, and the defilements that cover the mind are adventitious. They are something that can be removed. So we'll pause there. So Geshe said, then beyond that, not much more need for preliminary comments. We've said everything that needs to be said. I see. Yeah. No, I'm just seeing I'm looking at the sound settings. I see that it did noise remove by default. So probably the chanting was a bit weird. My apologies. This looks like the settings updated, but that's good for the teaching. Losugi.
Ya ta nganzo tangi keje de ya dosa tel condensed gare ta shongju lonje ramba shongju seri ta du shongju di lor tumbo condensed ipa condensed ma kan tan ro to chires.
So to achieve that Buddhahood, to achieve that enlightenment, Jangchup, that enlightenment in the ultimate sense, right? What are the stages that we needed to cultivate? How do we traverse those stages of training the mind?
Ota nganzo yina yo pagete desa so zo shi pe ta gemba mo yo arawas ota kange ge lo nye shi senjel kale jan lo ju chinela tama nyole pa didi zo sate lo re de ares.
So when you look at the study of the three seats, right, Drepung, Ganden, and Sera, You know, the students there, they're studying maybe for 20 or even almost 30 years, right? All of the various facets of the path. If you condense that into the essential instructions, that curriculum would be condensed into the Lam Rim, the stages of the path. Yeah, so for this reason, we are going to engage with this now in a stable way. So if you have the text with you, don't worry, I will read it out as Geshe-la reads it out. But if you have the text with you, we are on page 111, the stages of guiding disciples with the actual instructions. So the stages of guiding the disciples with the actual instructions. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Kandes laburi ze pabugi keshes labna. Yeah. Oh, deni nipa?
동아라 기바시 치기 쳐와 치기해야 돼.
Yeah. 안에 숨파?
아니 쳐와 단계 되는데 와.
chewa sum.
chewa 니도 된비. 시 간데스 로주도 놀라 제가레스. 숨바.
Yeah. So actually, you don't see it in the English here, but in the Tibetan version of this text, there's a number 4 beside the title of this chapter, the stages of guiding disciples and the actual instructions. And Geshe-la said that the number here is very helpful because it's a way for us to be able to keep the outline front of mind. So this is number 4. So Geshe-la is reviewing the preceding outlines. So the first is the qualities of the author. The second is the qualities of the Dharma. And Geshe-la said you could say the qualities of the Dharma of Sutra and Tantra. The third is how to practice and cultivate the Dharma that possesses the 2 greatnesses. And the fourth is this outline, the stages of guiding disciples with the actual instructions. So those previous 3 points, right, they are also like for the purpose, of course, of purifying the mind, but especially to bring forth a sort of faith and confidence in the instructions so that we feel comfortable cultivating them. So to tell us that these instructions don't just come from like some random person, right? These instructions come from wholly realized beings who teach from experience, and in this way we can have confidence cultivating them. So the stages of guiding disciples to the actual instructions. So now we talk about like what are the actual points to be cultivated to guide the students. And Geshe-la said, maybe with different language, but these sort of 4 outlines that we've spoken about, you'll see that these are essentially the same in all of the various stages of the path or Lam Rim texts. Yeah. So Geshe-la said that like take the preceding outlines as you're kind of shopping, right? You're shopping for a spiritual system. And just as when you are shopping for like an appliance for your house, you want to know, okay, is it a nice shape and color? Is the size right for me? What's the warranty and so forth? You want to know what characteristics a particular spiritual path has. Like, why is this a correct one? So it's a little bit similar to that. So now that we have some confidence that we are comfortable to cultivate the instructions? What are the stages that we need to follow to cultivate?
어딱 근디가 되고 거로다 병 수대도 년도를 다 자성적이 이스 바시다마.
So Geshe said we'll begin with the section which is His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama's gloss. So one of so one of the nice things, and this is the same in the Tibetan as well, is that the font is different in the text. The font that is in bold, just so you know, that's the 5th Dalai Lama's, and the font that is not in bold, that's His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama's. He says, like, I say things that you don't need, but I don't translate his scoldings to me. I'll keep that in mind they can be pretty entertaining. I do translate them sometimes. Okay, let's go.
다지와 도망에서 로마치 따자에 름바체 바샤발라 도마 dombi 무지 고주세 리와기바 더통테에서 대란게 몰러지 엄마르지 청와네 도망에도 데비 타질 먹겠지 뽕와도 좀 못티와 로초 뽕와 넘바 못세와 깊이 점바 체기 체바 아니 쇼바지 치쭈쭈 수네에서 디지스니레 드스템비 고른제라.
So, the stages of guiding disciples with the actual instructions. When explaining the stages of guiding disciples with the actual instructions, first, it is appropriate to briefly discuss foundational topics related to the instructions. Regarding this, Nagarjuna, in his precious garland, teaches 16 dharmas that are methods for first achieving higher rebirths. These are 13 actions to be abandoned and 3 to be adopted, abandoning the 10 non-virtues, abstaining from alcohol, wrong livelihoods, and violence, and cultivating respectful generosity, making appropriate offerings, and love. Following that, he taught the stages for achieving definite goodness, ngelek, and within that context of achieving definite goodness, he guides disciples through teaching emptiness.
So then,
when we speak about Nagarjuna, the Tibetans don't just say Lundrup, right? They say Gompo Lundrup, the protector Nagarjuna. And so Geshe said he is kind of seen as like a second Buddha in the world who taught the Parchintruk. Riksok, ale. Right. Who Chutruk, right? Riksok Chukawatu.
다 되는 거 말해서 내가
Ale, Riksok Truksen.
몰라도 가로서 유분다와 유자와시라.
Right. So Geshe is giving a Tibetan word, Riksok Truk. So anyways, I'm not sure, need to think about how to translate that, but these are 6 key texts of Nagarjuna, basically saying that there are 6 key texts of Nagarjuna. And so one of those 6 key texts is the precious garland of the middle way. Right. And so Right. So, part of what is being outlined here is that how our wish is to achieve that state of liberation, which is here called ngelek, definite goodness. But in order to be able to achieve the definite goodness of liberation, we also need to cultivate the causes of higher status. In other words, favorable rebirth to be able to reach that liberation.
And
so it actually connects with what was mentioned at the beginning, which is we cultivate the causes towards liberation along with that necessary for reasonable happiness within samsara. So then, in order to establish the foundations for higher status, rebirth in the human and deva realms, then there are 16 practices as outlined in the text here.
So
dinso sumnerwa.
Yeah,
Milu Rinpoche Raya, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes, right, we give the causes of like a human rebirth, for example, as 3. I was just checking that with Geshe-la. So the first one is the practice of pure ethics. So Geshe-la actually says it's the same here, but more extensive. So the practice of pure ethics is abandoning the 10 non-virtues and the 3 actions on top of that to abandon.
다 뒤는 뒤인데 다 저런 넘버 답한테 다 지워서기나.
Yeah.
지저에서나.
Yeah.
뒤인데 쩔다 하고 그러와.
Yeah.
아니 리가 이설을 쩔어와.
Yeah.
리지 먹여와. 저 참아치서 nga자.
Yeah.
리지 먹여와 송.
Yeah.
아니 마기 먹여와 시.
Yeah.
아니 이지 먹여와 송.
And so the 10 non-virtues, most of you will know that. We speak about 3 non-virtues of body, 4 of speech, and 3 non-virtues of mind, right? So with the body, it's killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct.
그래서 다 뒤인데 다 총한테 걸어보게 다 라스서는 간간 용어로야 이자 아니 좋은 못 좋아지.
Right. So in addition to this, Nagarjuna adds abandoning intoxication, because one knows that if one is intoxicated or drunk, for example, this leads to heedlessness, which can lead to many negativities.
다 되는 뒤에서 아니 뒤에 된다 로서 봉아.
And the next extra is abandoning wrong livelihoods.
다 됐다 로서세나 로서세나 그마자야도 zma시네 라야도 단 고고도네 라야 되지 간가래디.
So this would be livelihoods where, you know, for example, you're stealing, or you have to be deceptive with people, you have to mislead people, any type of livelihood that is connected with something like that.
다 되네 다 되지 치시킬라냐가 쳐버렸어요. 그래서 다 맞잖아.
And actually, this wrong livelihood for a speaker of the Dharma is a real danger. So a speaker of the Dharma has to be especially mindful of this. Yeah, because, you know, an unskillful teacher, right? They presumably speak the Dharma, but they can know that they can sort of drop hints or say certain things, maybe to get nice things for themselves, to get offerings and so forth. So if that's motivation, right? That could be a wrong livelihood. Yeah. So the next one is abandoning non-violence. So this is the conduct of ahimsa, of non-harmfulness. Right. So respectful generosity means not just those material things, but also the generosity by sort of using our body and mind, cultivating generosity in that way. Yeah. So another way of understanding this respectful generosity is that when we engage in the act of giving charity, right? We do this respecting the being receiving our charity, because sometimes if you give the charity in a haughty manner, or it seems like you don't really want to, that's not respectful, right? Making appropriate offerings is the next one. And love. Yeah, so all nice things to cultivate. So as we continue in the text, following that, he taught the stages for achieving ultimate goodness. And within that context of achieving definite goodness, he guides disciples through teaching emptiness. And so, you know, guiding skillfully, right? Starting with those beginning points and skillfully guiding sort of in steps, like a friend. So furthermore, in the Protector Nagarjuna's commentary on bodhicitta, he quotes the Guhya Samhaja root tantra thus: due to the sameness of phenomena in being selfless, one's mind is primordially unproduced, devoid of all entities, exempt from the skandhas, elements, sense spheres, the apprehender and apprehended, in the nature of emptiness.
다 쇼주 센데 센다 요 근데 저는 노지 수수시 용자라 뭐 소응화도 저와 뭐 요아레스.
So you'll notice this commentary on bodhicitta. If you look at the teachings that His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama has given, this commentary on the bodhicitta is one of the most frequently taught texts. And Geshe is saying that the reason for this may be because it kind of bridges both sutra and tantra.
당금만 홀레스라 지처티 사와레 다 근디오이나 어찌되지 저번에 와서 저서들이 순간에 왔어.
Yeah. So Geshe remembers in Holland teaching the commentary on bodhicitta, and this being quite a challenging text, but telling folks not to get discouraged, because even when His Holiness the Dalai Lama teaches it, he kind of comments, oh, this is like actually pretty hard, right? It's not such an easy thing to understand.
다 단단되지도 되리라 버레스.
Yeah. So fortunately, the text we're looking at now, it's a little bit easier than that one.
단 레위가 통송아.
Yep.
다음에 비타와 또니도 대도 정주제세 녜동 그조 정주제세 디지스 순비 동반이 이제 따와라 시점 말로비 뒤주고 거와 저 안에 수험병에 빠니에 고주근 영화 레바테나 둥아치 저 덴즈라 내제던 저로 시지에 봐 돈 둥아 세류에 봐 또반절라.
Yeah.
디자가.
So when commenting on this, Nagarjuna first taught the view of selflessness, emptiness, or ultimate bodhicitta, and followed that with conventional bodhicitta, finding ascertainment of the view of emptiness through contemplation. After gaining a correct understanding from hearing, if one excellently develops an experience arisen from meditation, one sees it as possible to generate a mind that damages grasping at true existence, the cause of suffering. One then realizes that suffering can be exhausted, and one realizes that there are powerful antidotes for the causes of suffering.
다 대수고요 살아왔어. 다 당긴 어느 쇼주 센데가 치선도 왔어.
Yep.
디깔에 이나 또 노진 안쪽도 제나 그조 쇼주의 생일 더.
Right.
대도 쇼주의 세질 더가 더야 나도 질.
Right.
시카레스
Right.
그데 세이나 테레스.
So this is kind of glossing further, right? These comments from this commentary on bodhicitta. And so when we look at relative and ultimate bodhicitta, we can see that, like, logically, and what happens usually is that you first develop that relative or conventional bodhicitta, and then ultimate bodhicitta comes afterwards.
다 대르망 예바레마도 동보 대도 쇼주의 세 도게 스지요 말레스. 동보 쇼주의 세도 디질 그조 쇼주의 세 도게 스지요 말레스.
Okay. Di apo komason karinsan na jangshugi tambo jangshugi semtop dene dijela kunzop jangshugi semtop di dundang jangshugi semtop karinsan pet go tongson
세디오스 예전다마다 마서 쇼주의 세니디와스.
right.
그조 쇼주의 세 대도 쇼주의 세니 소소서 마마서
Yeah.
다 그조 쇼주의 세니를 또 대도 쇼주의 세질 또 가마도 대고르데 세이나 지바를 마도 삼마도.
So when we look at these two types of bodhicitta, we just need, Geshe is saying, you need to be clear from the beginning, otherwise there can be confusion. In terms of how it actually progresses, when we speak about relative and ultimate bodhicitta, relative bodhicitta is achieved first. This is followed by ultimate bodhicitta. This is always how it is going to unfold, right? There's not an exception to that. He said that I mentioned a third type of bodhicitta. I hope not. Anyways, now it's clear. Relative and ultimate relative comes first.
다 원했던디나 쇼주 센데가 뭐를 쇼주 센데 가서
Yeah.
동보대도 쇼주가 세 때네. 이지서 그저 쇼주가 세 시간도 왔어.
Right. But in Nagarjuna's commentary on bodhicitta, he first explains ultimate bodhicitta and then closes with an overview of relative bodhicitta. So why is this?
다 대쇼주에서 뭐 넘보가 담보게 rolando 저 다기아레스.
이네 di inayang konso tambo kunzop jangshugi sen togore.
근데를 동보시고 저 단계라서 송화세이나.
Right. Numpo yang. Madujan konso.
Yeah.
So, okay, just making sure it's clear. So, this is
세이나세를 너무 강가츠는 거 자.
Yeah, it's so sorry. So, this is how sharp faculty bodhisattvas study. But I was saying to Geshe, that's who Nagarjuna's explanation is aimed at. But I was saying that if you say that's how sharp bodhisattva faculties study, is that how they actually realize it? And the answer to that is no, right? Even the sharp faculty bodhisattva, in terms of how things actually unfold in the mind, it's first relative bodhicitta, then ultimate bodhicitta.
저기 semba ombo nombo tiga 손지가 순발 대가로 차자니 손지가 공부 토야 요아래 손에 농소 저기 세녀래 지기요 말이스.
Right. And remember, the sharp faculty bodhisattva has this kind of like suspicious or spiritually doubtful mind. It's not like, okay, so the Buddha said that Buddhahood is possible, and to do this, you need to generate bodhicitta, so I'm going to do that. That's not how he or she is thinking, right? This sharp faculty bodhisattva.
손지가 공부 토지 요아서 손지 걸어도 자 첨벌이 수수 되는 이내 연하 매나서 다 쪼쪼대 아니 새로운지 저 요도 매 열다 제바시는 거 알았어.
So the sharp faculty bodhisattva says, okay, they propose that Buddhahood is something that can be achieved, but is this true or not? If I look into my mind's nature, how the mind is functioning, does Buddhahood seem like something is possible or not? That's how a sharp faculty bodhisattva thinks.
nga rungji yo me nga demba chaba yo me se demba chaba yo me ta tandi chene che goshin ju goshin te tumani de chi ra so na ha ko sarwa ta da z mari ba se da zma yimba me ba zo ju yo ba ko lo lu pa yimba de ha ko yung yo des.
So the sharp faculty bodhisattva is thinking, is the self truly existent? Are others truly existent? Is the mind truly existent? Then seeing that actually they all lack true existence, then the sharp faculty bodhisattva understands that emptiness is something that can be brought forth, and that the ignorance grasping at the self is something that can be defeated.
다 곧자와서 니를 다 키게 되는데 저 군조 나자 다 버게 예목을 다 열라 강가 키조요 봐. 키요 보이 맛 킹워시는 거야.
And the sharp faculty bodhisattva, through their scrutinizing engagement, then sees, right, that this ignorance grasping at the self, not only can it be defeated, but it is also the root of all of the other afflicted minds, like attachment, anger, and so forth.
다 대지 강가용 걸로 루바지 마도 zma지 마도 니네 버게 덴바지 좀 해봐. 키 동반이 동용 거야. 알았어?
And with that understanding of emptiness, then one sees that all of those afflicted minds, they're not grounded in reality at all, right? They are all mistaken. They are all based on false perceptions.
다 매바 조지요 봐. 동의들라. 키 조자지가 다 누가 단계 송묘 봤어. 강가 매바 조지요 봐. 동용 거야. 알았어?
When one sees that ignorance grasping at the self and the attendant afflictions can be defeated, then one sees how it is possible to reach that state that is beyond the three types of suffering.
그래서 다 된디 내서 통자서는 다 교정주 생기는 다 백도 정주에서 그게 시워시와이나 다 고깔레치는 요.
So if based upon this understanding, one then thinks, I want to bring forth relative bodhicitta, that relative bodhicitta is going to unfold much more easily, right?
폴리체킨 오지 키가 다 터자 시워 터져 통사로.
Right. So it's almost like, even though ultimate bodhicitta is realized afterwards, that when you are cultivating in the sharp faculty bodhisattva way, by the time it comes to generate that relative bodhicitta, it's like the football player, like the soccer player, is positioned right in front of the goal, like right in front of where they need to shoot the ball.
그래서 다 던지지 이자 다 될 손으로 돈에 다 내려 벌어 저거 뭐 대도 저기 세대 디지스 그도 저기 세대.
So this is the reason why, although relative comes before ultimate in terms of realization, in Nagarjuna's explanation, he explains ultimate first.
다 딘디 봐지. 그래서 야. 다 단저근데. 그래서 dunga seru yimba to banjala de tar dunga jajala nyambo to de ya ba shina tosuma di shin jibu taji yimba tongde dola chapi ni ji shawa tezo meji sumba ta je kora te dan zeji.
So if one realizes that there are powerful antidotes for the causes of suffering, one sees that there is an end to the results that suffering produces. And then there will be no doubt that compassion, longing for migrators will arise. Thus were the stages taught.
어다 지말라리 비수야데 집 나오다발에 용도 돈이 두비 니지시에 지말라리 비트르수 야레스.
So this really relates also to what Lord Milarepa says, that emptiness is realized, compassion unfolds, right? They are very much connected.
다 긴기가 제세 강가시고 통사와 이다 다 니지시와라 답에 할레베 답게 체 도고도 다 니바치 뭐 좋아요.
Because through the wisdom he cultivated, Milarepa is then very easily able to discern all of the reasons for cultivating compassion. The compassion that he brings forth is really powerful.
this one 단 this 대대 지지바지조레스 로도
Losuki.
쇼주 센데는 사 통송아
Yeah.
제대세 어디다 내는 거지 쇼주 센데는 제대세 대자 온보신의 넘버 준비 통송아 손디 자제지 치제된 리위 연비 원내지 따와텔라 바지 시라지 조도 집에 타지 녀래 타지 로녀래라 조이 지도 주제 먼저와 이
And so Geshe said, as we continue in the text, just sort of confirming what he had said. The commentary on Bodhicitta is a treatise that comments on that root verse of the Guhya Samaja root tantra, which was taught to intended trainees of extremely sharp faculty. Therefore, once those particular trainees ascertain the view, the way they are guided in training in the practices of the paths of methods assisted by wisdom is different. If we analyze the two aforementioned teachings of Nagarjuna, it seems that the way beings are guided in the precise garland of the middle way is intended for a general audience, and the style of commentary on Bodhicitta is for specific individuals.
this one 어다 déjà 코로 because 게제시사테 온보다 넘보이자 this one 넘보 시라가 녀래다 조시 아니 다 디지엘다 다 녀래
So that's right, because those sharp faculty disciples go with wisdom. The wisdom is taught first in terms of ultimate, and then following this, right, the relative is taught.
어단 this one 공사를 르르지수 과니라 또나 아마르지티 티도테 템바
Adila Fainsari. Yeah.
시제지 온데 시바 쇼지 센데지 티도테 고자 기제지 온데 시바 임바 뇽 텔라사로
Yeah, Dilasare.
어다 고자 템바 시제 세리 쇼동로도
Yeah.
고자 기제 세레
Yeah.
오모문라와 고자 문라와
So Geshe said here the language, like for a general audience, this means the majority of people, specific individuals. It's a polite way of saying exceptional people, right? So that means those of sharp faculties.
당연히 지는 다네 병화한테 고자 기제레서 비라레
Is this in the
고자 기와 니는 누가 당가
Kangzak?
고자 기
Oh, right. Yeah.
아니 너희 다 내서 덴바이절라 소바 콜로 동발라 소바데 덴바시인로도
So this is also connected to Sutra and Tantra, Geshe is saying. We mentioned that second treatise, the commentary on Bodhicitta, is connected with the Guhya Samaja root Tantra. We understand that Tantric practice is for specific individuals, meaning those of exceptional capacity, and the practices of Sutra are for a general audience, right, to be taught to anybody.
오야 단들 동방이지 시비 동바데 수지조된데지 동바 조 타듀니레 타와동 토제 준비 공부 지지 동바이라 천득 고이체의 시라지 둘라데는 타바동 토제 준비 공부 토제예바 로라 차터바 녜라 저데 데라데네 타바데니죠 로시기바이
Here, instructions, so we're on the bottom of page 112. Here, instructions in the phrase actual instructions refers to instructions for achieving definite goodness, the states of liberation and omniscience, which are the primary ultimate instructions of the Buddha Bhagavan. In order to understand this, one must first be able to conceive that it is possible to attain the state of liberation and omniscience through the assistance of wisdom. Through that, one must generate the mind striving for liberation.
어떤 안조이나 보게 템보 마용와 조지데 타와동 아니 어떤 소지가 공부사 도주요 바데 다 조시도메 시라다 뭐메이자 어떤 안조 텐디테고 다 템보 지금요.
So one of the main things that is actually holding us back from being able to achieve these goals to get to liberation and enlightenment is our lack of wisdom. Because we haven't really thought about liberation and enlightenment and why they are actually possible, we might not believe that they are possible. And in the absence of that, it is very difficult to maintain the stable, joyous effort necessary to reach those goals.
다 텔리라고도 해면도와스 타바 토주 요바도 다 손지살 다 보게 손지사 토주 요바도 시자소나
Yeah.
더니 타바 데니로 다페 다 리라고도 다 된대 그래서 요아레스
If we're though able to cultivate the wisdom that is able to really see that, oh, you know, liberation is something that is possible, that, oh, Buddhahood is really possible, and I know the reasons why it is possible, then it becomes much more easy to bring forth the mind that definitely strives towards liberation.
다 이니 민저 돈이 두바도 그 요마레 되네 다 돈만이 그 보겠니네 로또 초요 봐 수소나
Yep.
다 땡데 보게 타바 되니 그 로다 더니 갈레메 바치 유야야 이사레스
So that being said, you know, a realization of emptiness is not required, but a feeling for emptiness, a confidence in what emptiness is able to achieve. This will definitely help us generate the mind that definitely strives towards liberation.
라마 tsongkhapa 이나 게더름 뭐지다 아니 정말 라마 tsongkhap인들 용화라 저 가르 그거래서 저 니주 손주에서 요 답에 따와서 돼 그래를 때네 지체는 때에서 리라워를 때 템포 체크면 돼요 아다 원래 때는 좀 말해
So, Kedrup Rinpoche, that one of the main disciples of Lama Tsongkhapa, he asked Lama Tsongkhapa sort of what is needed to become a successful disciple. And Tsongkhapa said to Kedrup that actually it is just these three minds of definite emergence or renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness. So these three, to develop an understanding, should be simple, but there are very few who are able to engage with them.
다때다때야한테 오랜데 왔어 다 리스와
Losuke.
다 민주글로서 하고 가러 왔어 먼저 좀 민주글로서는 타바 되니 걸로 되세요
So when we speak about the mind of definite emergence or renunciation, we should have a clear idea of what that means. And the easiest way to think about it is the mind that definitely strives towards liberation. This is a very effective way to think about it.
오야 다 저바 동방이 저 로마 때다때 름바 름바라 니스 순바 디는 동방년도 런저 자와 신예 때미서도 때는 저다 중에 름바 쳇발라
So we continue. The fourth outline, the stages of guiding disciples with the actual instructions, contains two outlines. A, the preliminary of relying upon the spiritual teacher, the root of the path. B, the stages of training the mind having relied on the spiritual teacher.
다 건디게서는 노지 저쪽 로르근도 또 때다 보게 때야 비싼 내 동보와 동보치는 칠 사바이나 때때에서 문제라고 치는 거죠.
So a pause here. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama has said that for those who are studying the Lam Rim who are new to Buddhism or who are having their first contact with Buddhism, placing the way to rely on the spiritual teacher right at the beginning might not be the best sequence.
다 노지 저쪽 로르근도 또 때. 거기도 노지 다 거기 손질이 이치 템보 요는라. 로조 어디서 체비게 잘했더니 고바다 그 가게자 강시 주요하러 왔어.
So when we talk about the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment and the other Lam Rim texts, right? The way that these were written were generally for an audience who already had faith in the Buddha, right? For example, and also they were written for people who have already maybe done some study and cultivation. So then for such people to place the instructions about how to rely on the spiritual teacher near the beginning of the text, that's appropriate in that case, right?
다 사바사바 레 동보 앞에 정 고 동보는 로주서 그지. 나니또 제는 숨바도 태도도 야보도.
His Holiness has said, though, that for complete beginners who are just starting out on the path, the sequence of topics as presented in the Abhisamaya Lamkara, the ornament of clear realization, is probably a preferable sequence.
저도 덴바 노도는 수제라서 괜찮아서 니또 제가리나.
Kali tamo.
다 알았지요. 닐 뭐 덴바니.
Yeah.
아니 덴바시.
Yeah.
아니 전에 다 디나서 다 괜찮아서 되지는 거기 알았어.
So in the Abhisamaya Lamkara, the ornament of clear realizations, and so this is just in a capsule, right? It's not the elaborate outlines. It starts with a general discussion of the two truths, of the Four Noble Truths, develops an understanding of that, and then goes on to speak about the qualities of the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha.
다 동보라 년도 샤세동 통송이.
Yep.
니지 신예 때문에 로녀서 let's 니니.
So, with respect to the first outline, there are preliminaries for relying on the spiritual teacher, which are refuge and so forth. This is divided into the preliminary mind of refuge, then the actual practice of the path relying on the spiritual teacher.
다 동보는 개박하지 개박지기라 도치래.
Right. So a scholar once said, Geshe-la said that like this is a kind of like a euphemism. It's kind of like wise people say something like that.
기토제제 도마 신예 때서 코나 임비디 녀든도이 지제 매바 체제. 대라 다큐스 셰바 모던노요 대단한 신예 때문에 치고라 로준이 손주 로지름비 체드샤이 대자용 이라 견조서라 샤스마 소왕용 연바시 킬레기 반지시 대답이 대자트 샤스마 소용 지세지 너와 손집이 자도 머서데 신호가 제바 샹디셰바 샹디제바 조지도 셰트비제지 템발란지비 고톰바 샹로인바 손주 로지름비 사실이 숨비소
Right. The preliminary mind of refuge. A scholar once said that the beginning of Dharma is solely the manner of reliance on a spiritual teacher, and therefore there is no other preliminary Dharma to that. He presented many apparent sources for this position. However, if that were the case, then one would not have to assert that a trainee for the stages of the path to enlightenment could train in the topics related to relying on a spiritual teacher without having gone for refuge in the three jewels. This is not correct. Since that trainee has not gone for refuge, they do not fit the definition of being a Buddhist, and so could not be training in the stages of the path. Jo, Atisha, and Shantipa differentiated Buddhists and non-Buddhists based on refuge, and it is said in the outlines of the stages of the path to enlightenment that refuge is the entry door to the teachings.
Yep.
Yep.
도송.
체드샤이드자?
체드샤이드자사.
Oh, right. Yes.
체드샤이드자세리 다 보게. 다가서 깨지셔서 말했어.
Yeah.
그런 수사거든요.
Right. So Geshe-la is saying that when it speaks about a trainee, right, it is speaking about a trainee who is Right. It is speaking in many ways when they reference trainees, they're speaking about high-level trainees. That's the easiest way to say it. So it is said that, for example, if you go to a teaching by a great teacher like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, there will be many trainees or disciples gathered. But those who are kind of like the most suitable trainees, or you could say like the higher level trainees, those would be very few in number. Right. So the stages for the path to enlightenment, as taught by Atisha and Shantipa, right? These were taught with disciples who are already trained in minds like refuge and so forth. In other words, they already So they're coming to the teaching already having achieved some stability in the practice of refuge, for example. Right. So just going to this criticism that is made, right, that you would teach how to rely on the spiritual teacher before refuge, right? But without refuge, right, you are not a suitable disciple for a spiritual teacher. So that sequencing isn't exactly correct. It needs to be clarified. Right. So these so these words Chirolpa and Nangpa, right? These are Tibetan words that mean outsider and insider. So insider are people following Buddhist traditions. Outsiders are those following non-Buddhist traditions. So Geshe-la is just saying insider and outsider is differentiated by teachers like Lord Atisha and Shantipa based upon whether one has gone for refuge in the three jewels or not. Yep. So Geshe said outsiders and insiders, just to kind of gloss these terms, like what does this actually mean? So an outsider view would be that, for example, through engaging in certain ritual practices and activities to get purification, once one is purified, there's nothing more to do. One can be liberated. But the Buddhists are saying that actually it's not like that outer cleanliness or those outer rituals that can really have lead to meaningful purification, right? It is the inner purification of purifying the mind of the afflictions that is necessary. Yeah. So that's how the name was given. Geshe said that whether that's truly representative of how the traditions are actually kind of present now, he wouldn't say that necessarily.
Shivu Chendruge Longe Tejibi, Chunga the Tumoyin Chiku Yembe, Seche Tombi, Seche Tombi Lecheno, Tombi Telanju Balatade Zubi Sujini, Genja Rambata Su Shitong.
So we're continuing. Some say there is no contradiction with respect to mere refuge, but it is unreasonable with regard to mind generation, because the topics of the person of small scope come after relying on the spiritual teacher. I do not think that such an explanation is logical, since the topics of the person of small scope contain actual practices of the person of small scope and also practices in common with them. Out of those, the topic to be practiced in this context is not seeking a mere higher future rebirth, but rather the practices in common with the person of small scope that form the basis of the paths of the persons of middle and great scope. Therefore, it was said, in order for beings with beginning karma to enter into the holy dharma, the perfect Buddha taught the methods like an order in steps. So we're on page 114. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So here we're clarifying what is meant by a person of small scope. And so you kind of sort of hash the term out to sort of two outlines. The person is a person of mere small scope who is just looking for higher rebirth. The second is a person who is nominally of small scope, cultivating the practices of the small scope, but with an idea of reaching something beyond, right, just favorable rebirth. Yeah. So for those of us who are beginning a study of the teaching and approaching the stages of the path, right, when we read the small scope, it says that, by practicing this, you can achieve favorable rebirth in the human or deva realms. We might think, okay, that's enough. Like, I'm just going to aim for that higher rebirth, and that's good enough. Then you're a person of mere small scope, a person of mere small scope.
Shivu Chembi Longe Lorishi be Chu Me, Chunti the Tumoy Lorishi, Tanya Chigi Shana, Chisumbi, Gander Chebi, Shivu Chembi de Jaila. Della Nandi to the Shivu Chunga Demba Yembena, Senji Zisamba, She Meba Maza Shandaleba. Whoa.
So we continue. From the great treatise on the stages of the path, the Lam Rim, if the practices for the persons of small and medium scopes are preliminaries for the person of great scope, then they may as well be considered stages of the path for the person of great scope. Otherwise, why use the expression stages of the path shared with persons of small and medium scope? Therefore, the explanation in this context is directed at trainees of great scope, with persons of small scope taught as preliminaries. For this reason, not only is there no fault that it be qualified by mind generation, so that's bodhicitta, it is excellent.
Oh, that's a reason. What I'm going to do, Lotel, Tangin Rosatel Sunyares, Nachon Lord Candela.
Yeah.
She would chung the Tomoyan Longeramba. She would read the Tomoyan Longeramba. She would chemi Longeramba, Tamatel Tomo Jacamares.
So just to kind of orient these within the framework of the Lam Rim, keep in mind we talk about 3 scopes and these have very specific titles. The stages of the path common to beings of a lesser capacity, the stages of the path common to beings of a middling capacity, and the stages of the path of beings of great capacity. Geshe-la mentioning that you'll see in that third one, the word common is not there, and this is significant.
동보들라 도자라도 뭐 공부. 니바데 타바 좀 하고서라 다 선바데 다 손지고 공부.
So if you look at the sort of aims of each of those three scopes, the first, favorable rebirth in the human and deva realms. The second, mere liberation from suffering, moksha. And the third, anuttara samyak sambodhi, complete and perfect Buddhahood.
다 동보되는 하도 뭐 공부들 다다 찾는 것도 봐.
Yep.
아니 다 다시 조대래. 다 던지지게 다 봐시 지수 봐시 주어시.
Yeah.
아니 멜로 점만 소잖아. 하도 뭐 공부 비도 보지도 토요.
So in terms of this first goal, right, of the small scope, achieving rebirth in the favorable realms of humans and devas, right? We can say generally we speak about sort of three causes, if we condense that, of those favorable rebirths. Pure ethics is the substantial cause, then the assisting cause of the 6 paramitas or perfections, and the enhancing cause of stainless prayers.
다 야쇼들 다체 도쇼들.
So this is to achieve the very best type of favorable rebirth.
어디서 어단 저거도 다 니바텔 돈이도 비시라 저거 토기야레스.
And the second kebuching, and the middling scope, so the second of these three scopes that has as its result liberation, this is achieved mainly through the wisdom realizing emptiness.
다 선바티가 시부 챔비가 토자텔 다 인지 menja.
So for the third, right, the great scope, which has as its goal complete enlightenment, wisdom realizing emptiness is not enough on its own. It has to be moistened with the practice of bodhicitta and the associated practices. So if you think of it as a 3-story house, our destination is the 3rd story. But to be able to have that 3rd story in place, we first need to set the foundation of the 1st and 2nd levels. Yeah. So thank you. So we shall leave the discussion of the Lam Rim here, just a little over halfway down page 114. And so our sort of helper text, Geshe-la said, in order to bring forth a feeling for and understanding of wisdom, excuse me, we are looking at this text, Recognizing My Mother, an experiential song on the view. By the way, if you joined a little bit later, I mentioned this text is publicly available and the link to download it is on the page for this teaching. So this word, so in Tibetan, the title of this text is Tagur Ama Ngudzin. So gur means experience. So this is where the English experiential is coming from. So Geshe-la said that this text is a holy being's experience expressed to us as a song. Changkya Rölpai, yep, Lama. Yep. So the author of this text was a great being known as Changkya Rölpai Dorjé. Yeah, so he was from Amdo. Yeah. Yeah, he was. Yes, he was from Amdo. So so if you guys are curious about Changkya Rölpai Dorjé, you can Google him and the website Treasury of Lives will come up with a biography of him if you'd like to read more about him. So emaho, so we start on page 1. Emaho, Geshe-la said this is an expression of wonderment or surprise. You who reveals bare the wonder of profound dependent arising nature, O my Guru, your kindness is boundless indeed. Kindly reside in my heart as I utter these spontaneous words from thoughts flickering through my mind.
다 치 동버서 때 체제.
Right.
체제. 치 단스 유와데.
Yeah.
아니 좀 봐도자.
So the first 3 lines of this verse are the expression of worship. And the 4th line, as I utter these spontaneous words from thoughts flickering through my mind, this is an oath to compose, a promise to compose the text.
리송아. 통송아.
Yeah.
다 조설 제바제바르서 고로겠다. 라마르 제바지기도 왔어.
And so the expression of worship, to whom is Changkya Rölpai Dorjé offering worship? Primarily to his own spiritual teacher.
제바제기비 제세 가르레서는 사모 땡주게 대 권한이 뭐차와 대다 야체모데.
Right.
아니 시워 시초서 라마라 되는 라서.
Why does he offer praise to his spiritual teacher? Because his capacity to understand, to see clearly the profound view of emptiness happened only through the kindness of his teacher's instructions. Therefore, he offers homage to him.
또 사모사나 뚱바니로 왔어. 뚱바니 대 사모레 되는 델리주사가 대 뚱바니 매비티니 땡주 와야 돼 델리주가래 가와라.
So when we speak about the profound, generally the profound refers to emptiness. But when we speak about the emptiness of the union with dependent arising, that is even more profound. So that's why the line reads, of profound dependent arising nature.
다 지라마 라마 쫑카 비우승기 요아래. 뚱바니 사테 코 때제 다 하고서와. 여보 전화를 때서와 내가.
Yeah.
다 뚱바니 매비티니 강가 요아래 세대한테
Yeah.
So
Lama Tsongkhapa actually outlines this, that although it's difficult, by comparison, emptiness is sort of easier to realize than the dependent arising which arises or which comes forth from emptiness, right? That is even more profound or difficult.
민대들이 야지세때네 요디아라와 당간도 다치잖아. 하고서와 루지지 접아 맵 루지지 접아 매 세대한테라 여보 다치잖아 가지고 때에서 조토기도 왔어.
So when we speak about emptiness, if we speak about it as a lack of inherent existence, right? When we contemplate this, the fact that there is not, or that there's a lack of inherent existence, that's like doable to a certain degree to bring forth in the mind, right?
너 내가 troubleship이까 control troubleship이까 니네 예대 고로포게 로로 바템보요 바진 간도 노아샤기요 아래 누구도 옆에 노아 침모지요.
So we can see also when we're really angry or really attached, for example, the appearance of true existence that arises to that object that's bringing forth that emotion, right? So the appearance of true existence can be relative, it's doable to be able to identify it.
다 저런 뭐 대한테 리그노니 말다. 세그노니 말다.
Huh?
나로스 바기지 노송아서 도도지.
Nortodi, right?
porque 도도지 노송아서 저다 여바 노아지 도아서.
Right.
리그노니 여 말다.
Right.
세그노니 여 말다. 그걸 가와니나 차시는 로야 만두 잘라바이나 아주 떼스게 도고 도아서.
So we see there's an appearance of true existence, but when we try to actually locate that appearance of true existence, is that true existence within the body? Is it within the mind? Is it within particular parts of the body or mind? We see that we cannot locate that true existence. So this exercise, right, is possible for most of us.
다들 초아때들래서나 다들 그니 구자들라로 야래 소소이너레 예이너레 그때서 세근노라로 야래서 뭐지라.
So as one sort of goes through this process, then for a lot of meditators, there'll be kind of like a sense that there's no more person there at all, right? There's no more self of persons there at all.
라마 쫑카페이나 텐디조야 때 거의 다때 렐레 전에 텐데서야 다때서 리라와나 뭐지도요.
Right. So kind of proceeding in this way and discerning this, Lama Tsongkhapa is saying that this is something that is actually kind of like doable for most of us.
다 사모를 해야 되니 이나 깔래 카쇼 때 말해 텐디지요 말해 되니 이나요 이 띠니치 몸보초발라 띠니치 야래 사데
Right,
갈레
right.
가쇼드레
But then to come around to the side of dependent arising and say that there is this lack of inherent existence, but it is not that there is nothing there at all, that things arise in dependence, that there is this dependent arising. To come to this more refined understanding is a little bit tougher.
그래서 와다 알레드그 다 되면 어떻게 사다라
이샤라?
알레 세르가 제다너다 된다 뚱반이 됐어 워 시주 마치 제게다 달라마데 이자 될라마데 니르자니 다 될라 저는 샤차기
So the author here offering his prostration to the Lama because it is on the basis of the Lama that he was able to
닐
in his it was from this Lama that he was able to see clearly emptiness, and so he invites this Lama and his blessings to reside at the heart.
그래서 어딘지 와지 공제 티주게 치서 마고 치서 다지보게 말해 치라만다 치모
Yeah. So I utter these spontaneous words. It's like through that sort of mumbo.
치모게 제시기 있으마 그러고 좀 봐도자
얘네
그러 세를
직접 콘소 랑싱기 용기다 보시기 랭기다 보시기 알레
나서 사모뚱만이 뭐차 같은 게 와서 에라 이자 대마 치모보게 들만 해자기
So because he has uncovered this profound emptiness, then he is going to utter this experience of his heart through these spontaneous words.
단디는 중간 숨치 숨사지도 와서 대 중간 집어게 말해 문치레스
Right. So there is so Geshe is just saying that in the Tibetan, I don't know if it's there in the English, but in the Tibetan, there's this sense of this is not just going to be a few words, right? This is going to be a song of many words.
토소인
토마스인이 기면도 라바이.
어단저거 다 들이 되잖아.
디샤 되기래.
뭐야 다 있으시겠지.
So we shall leave it here. So we finish the first verse and we'll continue with the second one next time. So we are going to dedicate the merits. As always, I will say, if you need to get on with your day after the dedications, please feel free. If you want to hang out for question and answer, you are most welcome. Changkya semjo rinpoche maje panam chejurji chewa nyamba meba yang gone gonda bewa risho tongni tawa rinpoche maje panam chejurji chewa nyamba meba yang gone gonda bewa risho jambe pao jikdar Bado kundu zambo deya dejinde deda kungi jesu dalu che gewa dida tamje ratango tusu shebe gyawa tamje ge ngowa gangla chodo ngapa de dagi gewe tsawa dikun kyang zambo choji rabdu ngowa Gangri rawe koi jingande pendan dewa male jowe ne chenri ziwan tenzu gyatso ye shabe side bardu tenjo So I think I saw a couple of questions in the chat, so maybe we'll do those first, but then of course we'll take questions from you in person as well. So let me just see if my eyes are good enough to read this. Okay, so I'm going to just read the question out because maybe not everybody's on Zoom. Regarding renunciation and rebirth, is it positive and acceptable to say that one no longer wishes to be reborn in this realm of desire called planet Earth? Is this renunciation becoming fed up with the cycle of rebirths and deaths that only seek to soothe the suffering arising from attachment to desires? But then if one, for example, wishes to be reborn in the Pure Land, or please tell me where the ideal place for rebirth would be, since the Lam Rim, where are we here? Okay, this is long. Just a sec. Okay, since the Lam Rim mentions that the goal is to gather disciples, does this mean that one must be reborn in these realms where beings are immersed in their delusions and become a teacher who helps them to see so they can liberate themselves? Dene nganso di ngepar jungwa ngenjung seria gi lo di roa dene nganso ngejung samlo tangna nganso di tarpa dundun yerhui lo nganso kamdi jigten di ne tarpa gogidu samlo tangna perna nganso di jigten di ne ngepar jungwa gogire duas yene nga dagjing chik kena yapores di samlo tangna di digirebes matok jin nga korwa le ngepar jungwa chegores yene yaksho chungna soso di kandislab gore tokpa kiene jigten di tsur lebgi yores ane dungel nyongya gi jigtempa dinso gi dungel mepa soya gi kandislab gore sungche marshegires agosan. Yeah, so Geshe said it's a very long, so it's, he's asking why I'm making the question so long. Well, the question is long, so I don't know what else to say. But he thinks he got the gist of it. Yep. So Geshe says what came at the end is correct in both cases, actually. So if you're developing renunciation from samsara, right, you want to get out so that you become capable of helping sentient beings, then you come back and you teach them how to liberate themselves. Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. If you are developing renunciation for this world and wishing to be reborn in a pure land, the thing here is that you want to be reborn in a pure land for the sake of others, right? So you get to a pure land so that you can become enlightened and then help others. Yep. Yeah. So how does the definite emergence fit into this? Because it's like we want to get out, but we're coming back. And I think this actually goes to the gist of Martha's question. I think that's the spirit of the question. So what Geshe is saying here is that we understand that samsara means we're under the control of karma and affliction. As long as we remain under the control of karma and affliction, we're not going to be able to benefit others most effectively. So we have to get out of those chains of karma and affliction so that we can then, as Martha mentioned, come back and truly be of benefit to others. So it's also really important. Another thing that we have to clarify here is that when we talk about definite emergence, renunciation, like it's kind of like we need to get out of samsara. And when you say you need to get out of samsara, it sounds like that's like a place that we're stuck in that we don't like very much. But of course, samsara that we need to get out of is something that's inside our mind, right? Not something that's outside of it. Yeah. Right. So getting out of samsara, in Martha's question, let's define that. It's getting out of a cycle of rebirth that is controlled by karma and affliction. That's what we want to get out of. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Yep.
So until we get rid of that, until we get liberated from that, we're going to be like so consumed with all of these problems that we're experiencing. It's going to be hard to like think beyond that. So that's why we want to renounce that. Yeah. So thank you, Martha, for the question. I actually think that was a good discussion. Yeah. So Martha, Geshe is asking do you understand the answer? Is it okay? You can give me a thumbs up if you want. Yeah, go ahead.
That's why I make the second one. Can
Oh,
you please
okay. I didn't see the second one yet. Let me look. Okay. So, okay. Younger Chigere. So, okay, I'll read this out. Regarding rebirth, the pure and noble desire for renunciation, according to the Lam Rim, would be wish to be reborn near a qualified teacher who will teach me Dharma, and then I may become a teacher and gather disciples here within the realms of suffering. So I think you're asking, is that like the best thing that we should hope for, right? Dene Lam Rim nanglo laya roa nganso dagjing samlo matang nganso kebu dampa yapu chikdang tanya po kena dene dela tene topa kea roa dene topa kiene dene kanes lagre korwa yangsi yonga duja roba chegi chedres.
야, 다 던지고 쇼지 정도 야라. 와서
Yes.
도지라.
Yeah.
좀 리지가.
Yeah.
리지가 다지는데 다 리라가.
Mhm.
세지가 대자 자주 보저 토야도.
Yeah.
로도 두바강아 리라고시 또 야에서 대소는 또 야레스.
Yeah, so Geshe said that's the ideal, right, according to this text, but he doesn't want to say that the other one is wrong, right, because the some teachers are saying, like, going to the Pure Land, that's the most efficient way to get enlightened. So, like, go to the Pure Land first, get enlightened, and then come back. But you're correct in that this is kind of the main aspiration in this context. Yeah. Okay, so I think we've covered Marta's questions. Does anyone else have a question? I don't see any hands up. Abhilash, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, if there are no questions, I just wanted to read a question from YouTube.
From YouTube. Yes, no, go ahead.
1 second. So, the first question that I have is the Hinayana teaching of transience or change connected with the term shunyata in Mahayana?
Is the Hinayana teaching on transience or change? So anicca, I think,
Change or-
impermanence, right? Is this connected to the Mahayana teaching on shunyata or emptiness? This is am I getting the question right?
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah. Then nganso tek me seria di roa konso tso dungel chutamche dungewa mitakpa. Chutamche mitakpa di roa
시도시 동시 다음에 가르마다.
mare. Tesgua. Konso tek me dinso chugi rangshin mitakpa seria de tek shengi chutamche tompa re dunchik rebes. Konso anicca mitakpa seria di tekshen shunyata tompa nidang dunchik rebes. Konso goton so yeah. Konso tekmegi mitapa di tekshengi shunyata tompa ni res samso chikere. Di konso samso.
대로다도 말에 가도 있다.
Yeah. So we couldn't say that exactly. Is Geshe-la's short answer. We couldn't say that exactly.
맞아 다 다지 하래. 다 된다 치미야디 뚜마니에서나. 뚜마니에서나.
Yeah.
고조세나 다 가르세가. nemba
Yeah.
nemba 메바텔라 뚜마니세 그러was.
So when we say emptiness, we're talking about the emptiness of something, right? So what are we speaking about the emptiness of? And this is how we translate the term in English, shunyata, right? That's a Sanskrit term. But the person said shunyata, that means emptiness. It's an emptiness of inherent existence.
This one. 다 이나 용 똥바로 봐.
Yeah.
시도지 동시 다음에 세야지와로was.
Right.
디 똥아 되라.
Yeah.
오무다바 우두노. 왜야지와레스.
But when we look at the 4 Dharma seals, on that coarse level of emptiness, we say that all phenomena, all phenomena are empty and selfless. And in the teaching of the 4 Dharma seals, this emptiness is sometimes closely linked to anicca or impermanence. Yeah. So Geshe said with this, and in terms of the emptiness or shunyata of the 4 Dharma seals, he doesn't think there's a significant difference between the Hinayana and the Mahayana, or between the Shravakayana and the Mahayana. Yeah. But it's, Geshe said the anicca or impermanence, it's an antidote to the grasping at permanence, right? It's an antidote to the grasping at permanence.
다 동화세야 되는 내서서죠. 생각 주지 마들
Right.
있어.
Then the emptiness goes beyond just the grasping at permanence. Dagzin, right? Tagzin dang dagzin, right?
야, 지도지 동시다 매봐.
Yeah.
동화세야 주 알아봤어.
Right. The emptiness goes beyond that all phenomena are empty and selfless. That's not being impermanent, right? That's lacking true existence.
다 뒤는 못 답아만 내서 지고 용기 하래. 뒤는 내서 못 잡아서 용기 하래스.
Right. So within that are embedded three things, and Geshe said we need to prepare this, but he can give a more extensive explanation of this next time. Anything else from socials, Abhilash?
No, I don't see any.
Is that okay? So before we close, I want to see if out of the people who are here by Zoom, is there anyone else who would like to ask a question? It looks like we're okay. Oh yes, Nadia. Sorry, go ahead, Nadia. Yeah.
That's okay. Hi, thank you for the teachings. I'm not sure if I'm clarifying the question yet, but I might ask anyway. So how do Buddhas see the future if everything depends on cause and effect?
How do Buddhists, yes.
Yeah,
How do Buddhists see the
yeah,
future
yeah.
if everything depends on cause and effect?
Yes.
Nanso, that's your question, right? Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Nanso, Netsu chatsongwa gyudang kien la tene yongyores, gyudang drebu gidensores, denda yempa yendu, sangye denso konso ngunche la tene maumba chatsongwa kandes tongtu gires.
간에서 통통 그랬어요.
Yeah. Kanisana chatsongwa gyudang kendro gires, enso chatsongwa gyurwa drogi dues, dene denden maumba di yongires, kandes lab tu gires, ngunche kandes tongtu gires.
간에서 야야 통수. 빼나 간에서 통통 그랬으나 빼나 다 가서 코아된 좀을리도 코아된다고 빼잖아.
Yep.
하고서
Zambling korwa.
야 코아서는 좀을리잖아.
Yep.
코아된 놀로 빼잖아.
Company.
코아된 놀로.
Yep.
다 가로서 저기 자로 가려 요매도 되지내서 다 단단 가서 로지 바서는 내서 강가 도고도 왔어.
Yep. 하고서.
그래서
Yep.
다 손지가 내서 거야가 말이 봐 용서 줘 봐. 당길라 봐. 너 또 많이 거 중에 주대. 말이 봐 용서 줘 봐. 정화서 차바래스.
So let's just think about, we'll use an analogy here to answer this question. And we can think, like, let's just imagine for this exercise that all of samsara is contained within our house or within our flat, right? Wherever we're sitting right now. And we can imagine that when we turn the light on, right, as an ordinary being, in this moment, we can see all of the various parts of samsara in the same way that we would see like the furniture, like the chair and the couch and the table that are within our house. But the difference is that a Buddha perceives those things having abandoned ignorance.
세시월로 바소는 간조 동근도 왔어. 다음부터 간조 네 던지지 토인에서 지요 왔어. 손지가 용조가
Yeah.
고야를 말이 봐도 정화서 차와이자.
Yeah.
그만전에 잘라 놓지 다 도고 하래스.
Right. But we only see what the light is showing us, right? A Buddha, because they have completely cleared away their ignorance, they are seeing much more than just the furniture. They're seeing very clearly all of the causes and conditions behind it. Nangche di konso gyudang ken cha sangwa tongire duwa danda.
그래서 좀 해보겠자.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I want to check back with this because I am really not clear where Geshe is going with this.
거인에서 간데 지인은 그만전에 잘라 놓지 손지가 다 도고 왔어.
Yeah.
대토야한테 말 꽉히 말이 봐도 강가 정화서 차와라 왔어.
Oh, right.
진짜 가는데.
So, okay. So I'm sorry, Nadia, let's go back. So now I understand. So we think about all the ordinary furniture and things that we see within our flat and our house when we turn the light on. If you think that all of samsara is contained within your house, when a Buddha is able to perceive that, he sees all of the aspects of samsara just as clearly as you see the furniture in your house. And that is because a Buddha, he or she has completely cleared away the ignorance that blocks the seeing or perception of that.
다 데르마 코로체 모두 왔어. 다 체지 말해서 강가.
Yep.
전주 선발라 체 모모 요아래. 타바니티 다좀 발라 체 코로 시바도 마시베 내서 몸보디와스.
So we have to look at this unfolding of being able to see everything as a process. And this changes as you go from an ordinary being up to being a foe destroyer, up to being an Arya Bodhisattva, and finally a Buddha. What is unseen becomes fewer, and what is seen becomes more and more as you progress through that.
어다 나루 더더니 어다 데레. 아니 된 노지지 다 나루서 세라요. 강가 시야게 네바디와들 꽉히 몸보디 꽉디와 이자.
So our situation is our mind has the potential to be able to see and perceive all of this, but we are blocked by the ignorance and the other afflictions. That is blocking us.
세 고를 네바디와를 세기가네스.
But the mind does have that power. Chiwa lente maso. Nene chane kinete maso.
레테서 마시다게.
No.
손지가 간지서 통과요아레스.
Kariyan mare chiwa dire du anganso nesu kadine girowa drogi du as gyudan ken kadine girowa drogi du as ne maumba denden dilev gires kandes lav tu gires dilen ramason la yedela tene.
세시 와서 마고베 내서 시야를 말이 봐 강가 동아서 다 송아스.
All right.
대에서 강가 다 통과요아레스.
Titik maso. Sorry, anyways, Nadia, I was asking Geshe, I was pushing him a little bit. I was like, is that really the answer to the question? Because I was saying, I don't know. But maybe you'll be satisfied because you're not as much of a troublemaker as I am. Geshe said that basically the short answer is because they've cleared away all the ignorance, that makes it possible to see the future, right? That makes it possible to see. Yeah, now he's understanding more the spirit of your question. Namo chiklagin. So Nadia, I think the spirit of your question is this, and you correct me if I'm wrong, and this is why I was trying to kind of go further with Geshe. You're asking, like, our causes and conditions are changing all the time at moment to moment. Because they're changing all the time at moment to moment, there's nothing static there. So how can we purport to see the future based on something that's always changing? Is this the spirit of your question? Okay, yeah. Ko nanso kechi ma gyudan ken kadine gyowa drogi song mamba di denden legires kandes lab tugire. Okay, so I've rephrased that for
다
Geshe.
깨져 뭐 마셔야. 다가래서 저생이라 해더래. 저도 젠저와 간디슨 저거 요매.
Yeah.
마시베 말이 바통와서 살아스.
So,
대냐.
yeah.
대라 때니 저도 젠저와 저와라 때니 뭐 대서 나버나 용거로 왔어. 대 강가 코로시비 말이 꽉게 말이 바통와서 왔어.
So Geshe said the answer still holds, right? It's a falling away of that ignorance that a Buddha has achieved. So yes, those causes and conditions are changing in every moment, but because the ignorance has been cleared away, the future results of those causes and conditions become clear. And how those causes and conditions will change in the future, the unknowingness of that is also cleared away.
Did
Did that sort of get your question a little bit more? Yes, but Geshe says it is a conundrum, this question. He said it's not such an easy question, actually. But maybe at least we did a preliminary discussion of it. So, okay. So Geshe said he's going to think about this more and maybe think if he can give a clear answer for next time. Yeah. So congrats, Nadia. You got it was a difficult question. I think because the more you think about it, it's tricky. Yeah. So Geshe said, any other questions before we close?
Just quick clarification.
Yes, Abhilash, go ahead. Yep.
Geshe, I wanted to ask, he mentioned towards the end of the class as part of the songs of experience, it's easier to experience emptiness in comparison to dependent and rising. I don't know if I misheard that or if I didn't quite understand that.
So maybe you want like a further explanation of like why that's the case or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yep. Nanso kandes laugare di pesha nipadi Changkya Rölpai Dorjé di rwa. Dene Tompani le tenjung hakoya tets kale kawa res rwa. Ine tompani le tenjung kale kawa hakoya ki gimsen tets sepo koma sonsa.
매매매 tumba니 le tenju kale khaware se yo mares. Te
Yeah.
no madomato.
Yeah.
Tenju te tumba니 to ya ta ya shu tenju te res chato.
Yeah, so Geshe said, and maybe this was something lacking in my translation. So if that's the case, I apologize. I'll go back and check later. But what we're not necessarily saying that dependent arising is always more difficult to realize than emptiness. What is really difficult is to understand how dependent arising is possible because of emptiness. How dependent arising is possible because of emptiness. This is tricky.
단데 매도 니네 이마체. 이제서 니네서 말.
So Geshe said that imagine that the flowers that he's holding in his hand are not plastic from the dollar store. Imagine they're real flowers. So just imagine they're real flowers.
자서만 되지 잠깐 말이다세. 다 간조 야보 다쳤잖아. 매도 때 거저도 제 뭐지라 때는 슈한테 간조 매도 니네 이나 하고 그러왔어.
So Abhilash, when you first look at those flowers, right, your mind can reasonably posit that those flowers didn't just pop out of nowhere, right? That those flowers and leaves came about because of various causes and conditions coming together.
단데도 니제 버면도 마도 폴린라고 매도 니제 오지요나. 어따 때도 제 뭐지라 때는 슈한테 텐주된 간조 텐주라바도 레라고 통거라왔어.
Or Geshe said, an even better example is if mota di drona dene sewa drogra tirebe.
자쳐서 오케다시.
Bole di karishin lageri dang chibar.
세시 어서 다 뭐고 벌린다고 지요하러 와서 매도 도도지.
Yeah.
어따 때 간조 텐주 임바다 다토 그래서 보다다나.
Or as you get closer and closer to a round-shaped shrub or bush and see its parts, then this becomes clearer and clearer, right? That this is a dependent arising. It's an arising that's coming about through many things coming together.
그래서 다 때페 타리 못에 전 코폴린다고 지 동근디 왔어.
But as you draw further and further away from that round-shaped tree or flower bush, it appears just to be like a round circular sphere, a very unitary thing.
다 텔 타니 원도 갈래 파셰 잡아 있는 단계 폴린 저거 주사 요바데 괴들라는 것도 왔어.
But as you come closer and closer to that bush, as you drive your car closer and closer, you see that seemingly solid sphere or round thing, that initial apprehension of it becomes lost because you start to see how it's actually a collection of like twigs, branches, leaves, and whatnot.
다 때프게 사본도나 로지지 매바텔 세 템보진 도소나.
Yeah.
매도데 코로세니 라노 그러 왔어. 단계 셀 매도 요하러와. 다 때자와니 라야도도 먼저 제바시야소나. 건조질라 짠짠이 라야 매바데 셀레소나 매도 쇼노 요하래.
So as you come to this realization, if you contemplate further, you think, where am I finding this truly existent tree or flower bush? And the more you try to seek it within its parts, the less likely you are to find it until you have this idea that, oh my goodness, there's no findable tree at all.
This one. 다 니 많이 받으래.
Yeah, so that's the second step.
다 로지지 못자니 라야 문도 되네. 이나에 매도 매바 말인데 매도래 사실 셀 샤야지 그거 말이야.
So then your mind thinks, okay, I haven't found a truly existent bush or tree, but it's not that there is no tree at all. There is a tree that exists merely as a dependent arising. This is the third step.
어따 때텐주 차와래서 텐주들에서.
And that third step is the most profound kind of dependent arising, the understanding how dependent arisings can come forth connected with emptiness.
야야 동반이 지보 말해 돈이 또 로지지 매나요 매바래면 느리진도 사지.
So it lacks true existence, but it is not that it doesn't exist at all, because it comes forth as a dependent arising.
다 덤바서도 왔어.
Yeah.
예, 덤보 그저 다 간서 때는 라토문다가 때지 왔다. 그저 덤바 덤보도.
So this understanding happens in three phases. The first is we start to see how that tree exists on the relative level, on the conventional level.
This one didn't 텐주도 알지 요하래. 텐주지 요하래.
Yeah. And that's, an initial understanding of dependent arising, because we see how its parts come together as a dependent arising. So that's the first step.
다 텔라테네 그저 덤바도 텐주 텔라테네. 대도 덤바도 또.
Then based upon the understanding of relative dependent arising, karitop, nipati,
대도 된바
we come to an understanding of ultimate truth.
대송아
Of ultimate truth. Mhm.
대송아
Yeah.
다
The lack of inherent existence, emptiness.
다테 할레비 아부 차소나 대라 때네 그조 참모 땡주
Then, on the basis of that understanding of ultimate truth, emptiness, we can then understand how although things are empty, they arise dependently. And this is the understanding of subtle dependent arising. So that's the one.
어다테 갈레 가쇼들 라마 총카바 이나요
So that's the most difficult point in Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation.
하카사라와 제도 제드 제라 때네 슈와 로지 메비티네 대지 요야데 레라버레만두스
So to see how things lack inherent existence, therefore they are dependent arisings, to make that connection, this is the difficult point.
요메용은 되잖아 라마 총카베 능 고토금만두자 레자기 슈그레스 뭐
And remember that when Mañjuśrī first gave this teaching to Lama Tsongkhapa was like, sorry, I don't get it, right? Like, I don't understand. Initially, he did not understand it.
다원아 때또 때 토끼겠다 라마 서요아래 그래서 가 설라데네 라그레세 다 니가 제일 별매
So then Lama Tsongkhapa asked Mañjuśrī, okay, like, I don't understand this, so which Lama should I seek out for further instructions? And Mañjuśrī answered, there's no Lama in Tibet at the moment who's going to be able to elucidate this point.
다른 자가 노야가 다 전에 다 사파 갈레자네 몸벌려 버렸더니 다 담아도 놓기다
Barche, Jotu Masunto.
얀돈 단돈을 잡으면 되는 원로야 말이야
So Lama Tsongkhapa actually thought, okay, then like I'm going to go to India. And he had like sort of arranged all of his things and packed to go to India. But based upon various signs and things, it came out that maybe it wasn't so good to go.
다 자가도 가로 이단 소가쇼로 요 되지 시부터 맞자 친구지 와라 서레도 지로 깨도 친구지 와라 맞지 야 서레 라마도 메들라 라마자 친구지 되네라
Yep.
자가도는 날렌다 캠보 바시 소토야 같은데 작은데 스타치 뭐 이나요 벨스 로토면 되스
So he came across a very great Lama as he was kind of journeying to the south of Tibet and getting ready to cross the Indian border. And this Lama told him, like, if you go to India, you'll be able to maybe meet with some of the great pundits of Nalanda who can explain this to you, but you won't be able to get back. You won't be able to come back to Tibet alive, basically.
아그서로 아니 뭐다 라마도 가리 친구들 텔라테는 겐 라마서 카페벨주 갈레자니 타마 강가로니 마시고시 바로
So Lama Tsongkhapa decided to stay, but then based upon his own study of the Indian, Jungnen Sotane, Taorasan Kandesratsare, Dene, Madroni Dene. So he stayed in Tibet, right? He continued to study the text and he went into retreat to purify and accumulate merit. And finally, he came to an understanding. Yeah. So you know, he had studied many views and heard from many different teachers, but this idea, right, of this very subtle kind of dependent arising that is possible because of emptiness, that had not yet been clearly elucidated. So to understand emptiness and selflessness is a little bit easier than to understand how emptiness and selflessness makes it possible for dependent arising to come forth. So that's the difficult point. Namka Gyatso. Yes, yeah. So both it is Namka Gyatso. So both Geshe and I were trying to remember this teacher. Who was the teacher that Tsongkhapa met when he was going to go to India and turn back? It was the Mahasiddha Namka Gyatso. He was a great Dzogchen master who Lama Tsongkhapa met, and it was based on his instruction that he decided not to go. Yeah. So Namka Gyatso. Yeah. All right, folks. So I think if there's no more questions, we shall leave it here. Thank you so much for joining us. It was really nice to see everybody, and maybe we'll see you next Sunday. Take care. Tashi Dele from Geshe to everybody. Take care, folks. See you later.